Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, if 2020 has been anything less than a roller coaster, I don't know where you have been in the world. For a lot of us, our schedules have been turned completely upside down. Our lives, how we manage and protect the time that we have in the day, out the window. And I want to talk about that. Let's simplify that as in right now, what's working today. Now, side note, I am having this conversation with Nache Snow, our special guest, on September 25th, 2020. And Nache is going to simplify how to organize your life and make more time. So Nache is a podcaster, she's an online educator and a maker, helping crafters and creatives pursue their passion and sharing advice about productivity, journaling, and running a creative business. She's also the creator of the Life Cleanse Journal, which helps women focus on 10 areas of their lives and help them take action. Last but not least, she's of course also a fellow podcaster. Her podcast is called Studio 78, where she interviews everyday women who are doing extraordinary things. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Nache Snow. Hey, Nache.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad you're here. And, am I right or am I right? The world has gone upside down in 2020.
Oh my goodness. It's insane. I just remember being like, Happy New Year. This is going to be the best year yet.
Yeah, best ever.
Right.
I do think back on all of us because we were all there making vision boards at the beginning of this year, mapping out our plan and, writing in our new planners and all the things, and everything's upside down. However, here we are in September, going into the fall, and things are sort of stabilizing. I mean, depending on where you are in the world, it may be, because I know in the UK are going into a second lockdown soon. So how in the world do you start to even tackle time management in a world that seems so crazy uncertain? Where do we begin?
Yeah, it's weird because I think first we just have to get used to this new lifestyle, right? Because what we were doing in January and February is a little bit different now, right?
Yeah.
Some people were out of work, now they're back at work. Some people had kids that were going to schools and now the school is in their homes. So really, I think it's like everybody just needs to kind of take stock of their new life and really just figure out, okay, what is my priority? What should I be focusing on? And how can I shift all the things so I can still make time and space for me and the things that I love and my business and my family and friends.
And it's so scary when the foundations of life, whether that is how your grocery store works and can you get access to the things that you normally get or not, or that your children have a school to go to or not, or you're homeschooling at home, like all those foundations of life sort of got thrown out the window. It's almost like building a house on quicksand, right? It's like, I just don't know how to make this steady and safe. But and I think that's what's really tricky. Like, you talk about like protecting your space and your schedule. Like, how do we even do that if it feels like the world and our lives and our livelihoods are being built on quicksand?
Right. I mean, okay, so people always like roll their eyes when I tell them to do this, but I am a big fan of time tracking and really figuring out where your time is going right now.
Yeah.
Because once you figure out where your time is going, then you can look at that schedule and then you can figure out, okay, you know what? I need to spend, Sunday mornings doing this, Sunday afternoons doing this, and Sunday evenings doing X.
Yep.
Monday through Friday. Like, so for example, for me, I know part of my Sundays have to be meal planning. So Monday through Friday, I'm not even thinking about really what I'm going to eat. Right.
Yeah, totally.
I also know because I work a 9 to 5 job, when I'm looking at my schedule, I'm like, okay, after I get off of work at X time. How much time do I now want to spend on my side business? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Am I giving myself enough time to eat dinner, decompress, and then get
Yeah.
ready for the day again?
Yep.
And so I think when you kind of look at like where your time is going, you can then really move forward and figure out like how can you protect the things you love and still get all the things done, or stop doing those things that don't make sense, even like pre-COVID, I remember doing the exercise with a few people, and they, found out like most of their time was going to Netflix, right? And I'm like,
Mm.
well, you're trying to have this business, but if X amount of hours a week are going to Netflix, maybe you should say, I'm only going to do Netflix for 1 hour every day at the end of my day. And then 2, 3 hours or whatever are dedicated to your business versus dedicating 4 hours of Netflix, dedicating, so it's
Yeah.
just looking at all of that.
And I hear that, and I have done that, and I have fallen into that trap as well. And I can only speak for myself, and I can imagine there's somebody listening going, "Ah, that's me." Here it is, and here's what happens with me when I fall down the Netflix rabbit hole. It's because I'm looking for an escape, or I'm looking
Mm,
for an ability to comfort or soothe, or quite frankly to numb, because the outside world or the day I had was super crappy, and I
right.
just need a release. Now, I'm not saying that's the right release. Sometimes it is nice to watch reruns of Glow Up or any other kind of, trash kind of reality TV shows on Netflix. But you're absolutely right. Like the time gets sucked away. You feel empty after it,
Hmm.
right? And it,
Yeah.
it doesn't actually give you the release you want. What's working for you in that regard?
You know, especially like right at the beginning of COVID, like I decided to just kind of give myself some grace and take a break because
Yeah.
naturally I'm a workaholic. So I was just
Mm.
like, oh, well, there is, I had periods of time where I did have to stay home, and I was just like, ooh, but I can do this, 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 and that. And I was like, but maybe I should just take a step back. And during that time, what I did instead of for me, like binging on Netflix or what have you, I decided to walk more, and I
Yeah.
track that. I'm a big journaler too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just recently even looking at those first few months, March, April, May, and even June, and I did more walking than I think I have like done ever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I decided to make sure that I make time to do something that was kind of good for my mental health. So for me, I've incorporated walking. I've made sure that I've incorporated like space and time to do nothing. And then I just, really just tried to figure out like what are those things that I need to cut out, you
Mm.
know?
And I think the secret is in what you just said there, because I think it's so counterintuitive at first glance for people who are driven, motivated, go-getter kind of types. They just think, well, I need to work harder, more, 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 push more, hustle, hustle, hustle. But in fact, the exact opposite is, I think, where I find release as well. Like when you give yourself permission to rest or go take a walk or get up and away from your laptop for even if
Right?
it is like 15 minutes, there's clarity. It gives your brain a break, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the
Yeah.
magic is.
And it is really figuring out too what makes sense for you. Because I think sometimes people get caught up and then they're just like, oh, forget it. When people are like, take a walk or do meditation or
Hmm.
do some yoga or do whatever. And sometimes you just have to try a couple of things and then figure out what sticks. Because walking for me could be running for you.
Yeah,
Journaling, for me could be cooking for you.
that's right.
So it's really figuring out what are those things, and to me, that kind of gets back to journaling and time tracking and all the things, because you need to like take a look at what brings you enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know that if you're not tracking it in some form or fashion. Because when you start tracking things and you see a pattern of like, oh, I remember I really enjoyed doing X on Sunday, I want to do more of that, then you're going to like try to figure out how to create more space in your life to do those things that give you joy. And that ultimately will fuel you. And you're just going to be just a better person.
Yeah.
know?
Bottom line, right? You're making
Right.
better choices in the 1,000 daily choices you make, either in your business or in your personal life. When you are taking good care of your mental health and wellness, you make those choices with clarity rather than in a fog, right?
Exactly.
And
I mean, I even remember years ago where my friend for Christmas gave me a Fitbit, and I realized I was sleeping 4 hours a night. Like I was probably doing that for years, but I was just used to operating like that.
yeah.
And I was like, this has to stop. I have to get at least, 6 to 8 hours every night. And it takes some time, right? But now I've got my Apple Watch upgraded.
Yeah.
And I make sure like I'm looking at my sleep app, and I'm consistently getting 7 to 8 hours a night, which is a 180 from what I was doing years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
I can imagine also that, I'm just thinking back when I was in my 20s, and I also probably thought I was a bit more superhuman than I am now in my early 40s.
right,
Like in my 20s, I thought, oh, yeah, I'm really good at pulling all-nighters, or I only need 5 hours of sleep. You can sort of tell yourself that story because your physical body can do it, right? But over time, as you get
right.
older, you can't quite recover as fast. It's fascinating to me as your physical body evolves, and as your mental health becomes so much more important to take care of now than maybe it was 20 years ago. It does change how you approach your life, and bottom line, how you approach your schedule, and how you accomplish things or not, right?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And depending on what stage you're in life, like if there's someone in your audience that's 20 something, start now, because for folks like me who didn't start until 30, it's good there. It's not too late for us, but we've
Yeah.
already done a little bit of damage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so my advice is always like start as early as you can. But even if you're kind of, mid 30s or 40s or what have you, just starting is helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting when I talk to my younger colleagues and they go, "Oh, I only need 5 hours." It's like, well, you think that you're operating at that. Like, imagine adding another hour in if you can, and just see for a week, like, does it improve things? Do you feel sharper, faster, more joy, more calm, less anxiety when you incrementally add a little bit more to your schedule? The time is there, and if you have the ability to sleep a little bit longer or go to bed a little bit earlier, go for it. Try it as an experiment.
Yeah, because here's the myth is you think because you're getting less sleep and you're putting more hours into your business that you're getting more done, but you're not.
At all.
Because one, if you're operating while you're tired, you're doing it slower,
That's right. It's taking
you
longer for
know?
you to do it.
Exactly. And so, actually, when you're well rested and you have systems in place for all the things that you need to do, you can actually get things done in less time, and they'll be more accurate. You're not going to have to go back and fix all the things you made a mistake on because your brain wasn't operating at 100%.
Preach. I mean, like, I know that that is true. I've seen it in my own life. I talk to, other entrepreneurs who are caught in the trap of like, oh, I need to work harder, and the baby goes to sleep at 10 o'clock, so I need to work from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. while he or she is asleep, and that's my only time of quiet. It's like, oh, you just get sucked into that trap, and it is self-defeating. It is a trap. You will never get out of it by trying to hustle harder or work longer to achieve the same goals. Yeah.
Mm.
So back to what you were talking about earlier about like taking inventory of your schedule. Like do that for a week, right? Just to see where does the time go. What kind of
Hmm.
tools are you using to do that? Like paper and pen or Google Calendar or a mixture of both?
So it can be you have to figure out what you'll stick to because since a lot of people sometimes are resistant to it, kind of being honest with yourself and figuring out, kind of does the analog method help? Like for example, I have like a freebie where somebody could literally like print out a sheet and then, you know, carry it with them and then as they're doing stuff track it.
Mm.
But then there's apps like Clockify,
Mm-hmm.
and there's other apps, time tracking apps too.
Yep.
And sometimes that's easier for people because most people are on their phone all day anyway. And so as you're doing things, you just have to remind yourself like every 30 minutes or an hour to like, record like what you're doing. Cause if you wait too long, you kind of forget all the little things you're doing in between.
Yep.
So you can use one of those two methods depending on which one you think you're going to stick with.
Yeah, definitely. We've used as a team in the past Harvest. So you can go to
Oh
like
yeah.
getharvest.com. I'll put all these links, by the way, in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. But yeah, Harvest is great because then it has the app form and the desktop form, and click the start and stop. You can attach it to job like codes per client. So down to the minute, you're actually billing the client for exactly the amount of time you spent on the client work that week, which takes it even one step further because then it's integrated into your QuickBooks or your Zero bookkeeping software and bish bosh boosh. I mean, we're talking simplified. Like
You're right.
that's the main goal here is to actually turn as much of your time that you're spending at work into billable time to your clients. The non-billable is that's the goal, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's all about having those systems in place, automating as much as you can.
Yes, but it's scary at first. I know, and so like for at first, what is working for me is having Google Calendar open on your desktop and just time blocking it out, so that you say,
Hmm.
oh, okay, I'm having a conversation with Nache for an hour here, and I'm going to work on this client project for a half an hour here, and tracking it and seeing if you actually stick to the time that you allocated. Like I think that's the
Right.
hard part is you think like, oh man, I thought it was only going to take me a half an hour to do this task. It took me so much longer. What advice would you give that person who says that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is like, and you have to be honest with yourself and know that you're going to get better over time,
Hmm.
figuring out how much time you're putting towards a task. So, for
Hmm.
example, if I'm writing newsletters or blog posts, when I first started, I was like, oh, it's not taking me that much time. But then when I was tracking it, it was
Uh,
taking me a long time because if I counted looking for images to use in the post, the research for the data that I'm including in the post,
right.
writing the post, rereading the post, and then I was like, oh, this actual one blog post
Yep.
it's taking me hours and multiple days, right, to make sure that I have it all together.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like really being honest, and then kind of learning how long it takes you to do whatever task. And then if it's something like, for example, a client call, I think the trick with that is I remember I dabbled in like a little bit of consulting initially.
Mm.
And my problem was I was like, oh, we're only going to talk an hour.
Hmm.
And then it ended up to be like 2 hours. And I'm like, well, that kind of like really cut my profit in half
Yep.
because I didn't stick to the hour that
Yeah.
I said I was going to do because I was enjoying the conversation. And I'm like,
Right.
now if you're if you're going to, make money, at anything or just be good and protect your time, you have to like be honest with yourself, figure out ways that you can really stick to that time. Or, if you truly need that amount of time for something, you'll just have to figure out like, okay, I actually need an hour and a half for X. And
Mm-hmm.
so that means I need to look at my day a little bit differently in order to make sure that I'm fitting in, X, in
Mm-hmm.
the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. And it's like, as you said, like systemizing tasks so that you can, if you track it and you go, okay, gosh, that blog post took me 3 hours when I thought it was only a 1 hour task. And actually, I also needed that time to marinate on, like, write it on Monday, edit it on Tuesday, upload it, and do all the graphics on Wednesday, upload it to your blog. Like breaking it out actually helped
Mhm.
it to get accomplished rather than trying to cram it all in one 3 hour time slot. I think that
Mhm.
that's really interesting to me to like track it, test it, and then refine it over time. And then take it one step further is, if there are bits and pieces of that task that you're just either A, not very good at, or
Right.
B, you hate doing because maybe you're not a graphic designer, but you are a writer, then you can start to figure out what pieces you're going to delegate to a virtual assistant or someone else,
Right.
right?
Right? So you can figure out what pieces you need to like give away, and it's kind of being okay with like giving away that
Yeah.
control,
Yep. It's
which is
tough.
I know hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Another way to do it too is like, let's say if you're at a point in your business where you're like, oh, I'm not ready to invest or I'm not making enough profit to invest, then it's really looking at what that task is and seeing if you can batch it.
Yep.
So, for example, for me, because my schedule is like a little insane and I'm trying to protect my time, like even for when I first started doing podcasts, it was like I would interview you, and that same week I would interview you, I would edit, I would
Mm-hmm.
do the images, I would do all the things, right? And then I
Mm-hmm.
mean, oh my goodness, that whole week was just that one podcast
Yeah.
episode, and I didn't even have time to really do some of the other things to really market it. And so I then created a system. So, like, even for the next season of my podcast, I just spent the last 2 weeks interviewing all the people.
Mm-hmm.
The next 2 weeks, I'm doing editing, right? And,
Right.
getting all my images together and putting them into co-schedule. And there's a little bit of overlap because I am going to start the season,
Yep.
but I'm batching everything. So, by the, middle of October, the podcast will be started, but really everything is just kind of like automated now. My social, media posts are going out via co-schedule. Like I can now then
Mm-hmm.
focus on, newsletter content or creating a YouTube video and batching something else.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine, in that batching of the work, it's helping your brain stay in flow with that particular type of work because interviewing requires, good listening skills. It requires, for me at least, my right brain side, my creative side to be switched on. But then when I'm starting to kind of like do just like, I don't know, creating graphic designs for something, then that's a different part of my brain. Or if I'm doing my bookkeeping, it's kind of linking into my left brain analytical side. So do you find that that's helping you kind of stay in flow when you batch, or are there other benefits to it?
No, I exactly 100%. I feel like that batching allows me there's like a flow in a conversation. I remember like, okay, yeah, I really wanted to find out how people are building their communities,
Mm.
this during all of this, right? And so since I'm interviewing so many people at the same time, I'm remembering to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And I'm also building off of like what I learned from the last person since
Yeah.
the interview was so close.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, actually I just talked to someone who said they use that too.
Right.
That's interesting. So because I'm doing it all together, it does have a flow. And I find that too when for example, when someone first joins my email list, I have like a series of 10 emails that automatically go out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote like all of those emails for the most part at one time, put them into Flowdesk, and then I'm just like, okay, I don't have to think about them.
Yeah.
They all kind of tie into each other because I've created them, at the same time so they feel
Yeah.
connected. So
No.
there's some benefits.
It makes a lot of sense. And, I think we all know these things instinctually. And we like, well, let me just speak for myself. Sometimes I become like a goldfish. And, 8 seconds later, I am like, forget my name and I forget where I am. And I just go like, ooh, shiny, look over here. And you chase whatever the next thing is that you've heard of. But we do know instinctually that time chunking and batching our work and all of this makes a lot of sense. And then we don't do it. Why is that?
I know. I think it's because it's like hard, like we get distracted. It's like squirrel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't value sometimes our own time.
Mm.
And so what I tell people is like, if you're going to do it, commit to it. So like even you mentioned, having things on your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I always recommend for people is like, after you do the time tracking, you then do this exercise like, okay, this is where I want my time to go. This is how I want to batch things. This is when I want to walk. This is when I want to do whatever. And then you put all the things onto a calendar
Yeah.
and you actually stick to it. Like
Yeah.
if this is on the calendar, then you are committing to do it. So a little bit of that is like that mindset piece too, because you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Somebody could be like, oh yeah, I need to do better. They could add it to the calendar, but they don't, look at their phone when their phone is like, ding,
Yeah.
you now need to be, spending 1 hour, just reading and responding to emails. So
Mm.
if you don't have that right mindset, you're not going to get anywhere. So, really probably the first part of all this is really saying to yourself, I'm going to commit to it at least for 30 days. And, it sounds like hogwash, but I promise you folks, like if you just do it, it really works and then it becomes second nature. And then give yourself some grace too, because I'm like a really like hardcore person when it comes to productivity, but I have times all the time when I like might not stick to what I said I was going to do on a Sunday. Like maybe I have to pivot,
Yeah.
and that's okay too. But for
Yeah.
the most part, I'm sticking to what I planned.
Yeah. This really reminds me of a conversation that I had a while back earlier this season with Trevor Blake. And he was simplifying like how to work a 5-hour workday and run a business, a very successful business, mind you. The man's like, started and sold 3 businesses for $300 million. I mean, it's just insane. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he was saying is, be committed to a schedule. And every single day he takes a 2-hour lunch with his wife and, goes and walks around the block with his dogs and all of that. Now, 2 hours may seem like absolute luxury. Like there is no way I can curve 2 hours out of my life. But if this
Right?
guy has done it and has these
And his name.
incredible businesses, there's got to be something to it. So we have to really stop letting the hustle and grind mentality that the world is trying to cram down our throats into our lives and start to rewrite those scripts, because I'm right there with you. I don't think working harder or longer hours is actually going to get us to where we want to go. And I think working smarter, doing
Mhm,
less, focusing on
mhm,
the right tasks is actually where progress is made.
mhm.
And I kind of believe also that as a business owner, and I know it's so hard when you're first starting out because you are wearing all the hats and there is very little cash coming in, and I totally know. However, I know that when I focus on what I call higher yielding tasks, which are bottom line sales and client relations, taking good care
Mm.
of my clients and doing like the magic secret sauce work that only I can do, that's the higher yielding task. And then vow to delegate everything else as much as you possibly can. this is where the magic is. This is how you make more time in your schedule too. Are you finding that?
Yeah, I do. And it's funny. I listened to that episode with him yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And I went on my walk today and I was like, you know what? Because normally when I go on my walk, I listen to a podcast or an audiobook, but I remember hearing him saying he listens to nothing. And I was like, let me try this nothingness.
What is this nothing you speak of?
Right. This nature, the sounds of nature you speak of. And so, but it was good. I mean, I will probably, alternate because I
Yeah.
just love my listening to like all the podcasts.
Yeah.
But I do find that, I don't know, it's a weird thing. I think we, and it's probably just how we were raised. We were raised to think the busier we are, the better we're going to be.
Right.
And in reality, it's not true. And even he said in his episode, if you look at some of the most successful people, right, they're not doing all the things, and they're definitely not doing all the things themselves.
Right.
They have delegated out as many tasks as possible,
Yeah.
and they are only focusing on the most important things, the things that they can do to actually move their business forward. And
Yeah.
so I do, think that what you said is spot on. And, one thing I always tell people too is, have your top three. Like every day, I know what my top three things are and the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so when you know what those priorities are, then you are going to be more productive and you're not going to get distracted by all that other stuff.
And, because there will be curveballs. Somebody is going to ring your doorbell today, I'm sure, and drop off an Amazon package, or, somebody's going to land an email over into your inbox. It's like, it's a fire, put it out, right? It always happens. Your kid comes home sick from school if they're back in-person school. So there are going to be curveballs.
For sure.
Yeah. But then I think what I'm hearing you say is that when you have your schedule in place and you also know your priorities, like my top 3 tasks for today are this, then you can learn how to discern, okay, well, even though this curveballs happen, I'm dead set on focusing on these tasks, and everything else has to either get delegated, ditched, or delayed, right?
Absolutely. And, even though it's probably like a terrible phrase, but there's a phrase that says like eat the frog,
Yeah.
which, essentially, when I get up in the morning, as soon as I get up, like tomorrow morning, as soon as I get up, I'm just going to immediately get up. I'm not going to dilly-dally and get on the phone and go on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm going to, give me some breakfast real quick. And then like my first thing is editing, because I'm now in phase 2 of editing podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And I know that is kind of going to be the biggest, most challenging task for my day, for tomorrow, which is a Saturday. And so I'm just going to, and eat the frog means just do that thing that is going to suck up the most of your time. If you like it or don't like it, just do your most difficult task first, get it out the way. It's on your top 3. It's difficult, so it's number 1.
Yep.
And so for me, boom, knock that out, right? And then after that, I'll go to the second task. And then, which for me is like starting to like do some more newsletter stuff. And then, then you go to the third task, maybe. And I only say maybe because it goes back to what you're saying, like something can happen. Your kid could all of a sudden get sick, right? Your dog could be like, hey, I need to go for a walk. I got to go to the bathroom. And then you get distracted.
Right.
Anything could happen. But then maybe that third thing, I'll keep it in mind, and either I'll do it later on, in the day, or I'll look at my schedule again, for the next week and figure out where that task should be weaved in, which might make me shift like other things.
And kind of what you're saying there totally makes sense to me and relates to what we said at the very, very top of our conversation. If you're feeling like your house is being built on quicksand and things are so uncertain, I think this really reminds me back to the thought that no matter what is happening in the outside world, you still have control over you, right? You have control over how you perceive what is happening in the outside world, whether it's real or just all in your head. And you have the ability to control how you're going to react to it. And that's the secret, because I think for me, when I get in that spiral of like, oh my God, the world's falling apart, right? It's so easy. Your brain goes, fear mode, red alert, right? And you feel like that sense of scarcity of like, oh, I don't have any time to do anything. And all the things are piling up on my shoulders and hit the big red F it button, right?
Yes.
But you do have control. You have control over
Complete.
you, right? Your schedule,
Right.
how you react. Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, because I think, and I think, and it's unfortunate, I feel like we as women too, we want to take care of every single person.
Yeah.
And then when you hear like that, the story where, the airplane story where, put the mask on you first and then on
Yeah.
the person next to you, that's not innate in us, right? Like we want to take care of everybody else. And then also on top of trying to take care of everybody else, the things that are going on around us in the world, or just even, with our immediate family or friends or what have you, it's like this weight that's sitting on you. So you're trying to take care of everybody else. You have like the weight of the world. You're trying to figure out like how you can help all the people all the time. And in reality, you can't.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like taking a step back, really figuring out how can you take care of yourself first, which might seem selfish, but it's not, because if you're not doing okay, goes back to the airplane thing,
Yeah.
and you fall apart, the whole house falls apart.
That's right.
Everything falls apart. You're not good for anybody.
Yep.
So for me, it's like really looking at like your schedule, like what's important to you, figuring out, even if it hurts someone else's feelings because you're not going to FaceTime them, on Sunday morning or whatever it could be, or, or that client that insists that, that you are available after hours, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
you have control over your time, and you just have to have the courage, right? To be able to say no when it makes sense. And you have to just get in the right mindset to only do the things that are really important to you. And I'm not saying it is easy at all, but start small.
Yeah.
And then eventually you'll get better over time. And after that, it's almost like second nature,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I would really encourage anybody who's listening to this right now and is inspired, just give yourself permission today, just today, to
Just one day.
take Nache's advice here as if it were true, which it is, by the way. Spoiler alert. Take it on today and see, like with radical courage of, putting those boundaries into place, putting yourself first. What does that do? How does that feel? What does the end of the day look like? And if it was a big freaking disaster, that's okay as well, because it's just an experiment, right? I'm going to be willing to bet it isn't going to be a disaster. But if it does, just to today, yeah, and see what feelings come up, see if that releases anything inside you as well. And then you go, oh, that was actually really good. I think I'm going to try tomorrow and maybe the next day. And maybe next week I'm going to shift and reprioritize how I set my schedule or how my communications flow and expectations and boundaries with my clients are. So they're not texting me at 9 o'clock at night. Like all the things, it's a ripple effect, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's interesting too, because I feel like when you start to do that, you will have more success in other areas.
Totally.
So, like, that success will come, because I think sometimes people feel like if they are selfish with their time, and if they're not doing all the things, then they're not going to be successful. And that can be successful in your business, as being a good mom, a good friend, a good whatever. But actually, you will be surprised if you just stick with it and you're smart about it and you pivot and adjust where you need to, like you will achieve success. It's almost, like I tell people I was like in my 20s, like in a ridiculous amount of debt from like school loans to credit cards from college.
Yeah.
And to me, I was just like, oh my goodness. And at the time I wasn't making that much, but I was like, had a couple of side hustles. Like I was doing all the things and I'm just like, something has got to give. It just felt like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be able to get past this.
Yeah.
But it was just one day at a time, right? And I'm like debt free, and I've been debt free for over a decade, right? Because I changed my mindset and I was like, okay, this is what I need to do to get debt free. This is what I need to do in my career. This is what I need to do for my side business. And these are the habits I need to stick to so I'm not spending money, and then I'm sticking to the schedule that I have created in order to, get rid of that debt.
Yeah.
And it worked. And so I just mentioned that, even though it's a little different than what we were talking about, but it, by just believing in yourself, maintaining in your system and schedule, you can do some good things.
Yeah, and wherever hole, proverbial or real, that you're in right now, you can get out of, and what I hear in what you just said there is creating a plan, taking daily imperfect action towards that plan, having and building that discipline to follow that schedule that you've set for yourself, because that schedule is built on your assessment of what's really, really important, that brings you joy, but also builds your business, and stick with it. Yeah. So talk to me about practical tools. Like, what is it you're actually physically using to help you stay accountable to your daily schedule?
For sure. So I'm a big bullet journal person.
Yep.
So it's actually, I'm using a Leutsch term, and so this is like a little much for some people. So if you don't want to actually draw out your weekly schedule, then you can have a planner. But I think it's really important for me to use it to not only track what I'm doing every day, but also just to kind of like plan ahead. And then after that, I use Calendar 5, which is an app. And I love it because with iOS 14, they already have widgets.
Yeah.
And you can schedule like just, regular calendar schedule, Gmail calendar syncs right into it. But you can also do daily tasks.
Cool.
And so that, on my phone, because we always have our phone, kind of keeps me in check. Like I knew I had an 11 o'clock interview with you. And after that, I have my to-dos for today that I know I'll need to do.
Sweet. Yeah. And you also use an acrylic monthly calendar as well, like a desktop calendar, or something that you can, wipe clean, or do you not?
So it's interesting. What I do at the beginning of the year, and I learned this from another podcaster, is I have this. It's really cheap. I wish it was more beautiful. There is one that is actually beautiful that I'll send you the link so you could put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But when I'm planning out my year, it's like you could get it from Staples, the one I have, but it has the whole entire year. And then basically I figure out what I want to do for that year. So as far as like marketing, new products, when, the different seasons of the podcast are going to be. And then, so that's the only really physical, like big calendar I have. And then all that information gets put into Calendar 5 and also like the bullet journal.
Good stuff. Well, if you guys are curious about Nache, and by the way, the Life Cleanse journal that she has and all the tools that she has available, including her podcast, I highly recommend checking out her website. It's Nache Snow, Nache Snow.com. And again, that link is all in the show notes for you guys at the simplifierspodcast.com. And check it out. I think that there are so many tools in your website. It is such an endless resource with your blog and all things when it comes to time management. And I really, really hope people will really take the deep download from this conversation of do not try to do more. It's not about cramming more in. It's about actually
No.
doing less and sticking to a schedule, right?
For sure. I'm even dabbling with GoodNotes now because a lot of people are into digital planners.
Yeah.
And so, I talk about, all of that on my site or my YouTube channel because I realized there's no like one size fits all. Like for the two of us, we probably have kind of slightly different ways that we are doing our time management. But I think just the most important thing is you have a system, be it if it's a planner, a bullet journal, a calendar, a
Yep.
combination of the two. It's what is important to you should be somewhere, and it should be chunked out in like a schedule format, and you have to commit to actually following it.
Yes, and for me, I'm a visual person, so it's got to be somewhere on the wall, or if it's Google Calendar, it's got to be open on my desktop, so you can visually see it multiple times in your day, and that helps you. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be here. Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing next week. And remind you. So if you have goldfish brain like me,
Yes,
you won't
yes. And
forget.
if you're an Apple person, definitely update to iOS 14 because now with those widgets,
Yeah.
it gets even easier. So I have it as soon as I open my phone, boom, right there in like a little post-it format,
Yeah.
all the things I need to focus on that day. Boom. I love it.
Brilliant. Nache also has a freebie for you guys that are listening. She's got free printable journal stickers. You can go to nachesnow.com/simple to find those or to the show notes as well. So, Nache, I've got a few questions as we wrap up that I like to ask everybody. And thank you again so much for your time today. I think it's really important to talk about these things. We know it deep down inside, but we just need little gentle nudges and reminders that help us simplify. So tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
So I am a creative. I'm like a crafter. I'm like all the things.
Yeah.
So my favorite book in the whole wide world, which I've read twice, is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's just something magical, which sounds so woo-woo about that book. But as a creative, I just love it and I just feel inspired every time I read it.
It's so good. Such a great book. We'll put a link in the show notes for people if you guys want to check that out. So tell me, who's one person in your network, somebody you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things, and we could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Yeah, her name is Monique Malcolm. And speaking of brilliance, she is pimpyourbrilliance.com and absolutely love her. Discovered her at a Craftcation conference a couple of years ago. And she has like a wealth of resources, a membership site, and basically she helps creatives like develop their first product from thinking about what it is to strategy to marketing to even figuring out how to stay organized in like things like Asana. So she's amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah, we will definitely link up with her as well. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Mm. Yeah, in today's world, I'm just grateful to be healthy.
Yeah.
Just, I, you know, I'm just glad that I'm able to like walk, do the things that I love, you know, have an iPad that has my favorite app Procreate on it, journal every day that just I can breathe and actually do all the things that matter to me. So I would say it would be my health.
Never more has that been more true than 2020. I think a lot of us have started to really realize how incredibly valuable that gift really is. So,
Yeah.
Nichelle, if people want to connect with you, is there one place on social media, or is there best to connect with you on your website? Where can people connect?
For sure. So, nachesnow.com has like all the things, business, productivity. Like if you
Yeah.
want my brain, just go there. Nache is spelled like nacho, but without, instead of a O, it's a E.
Yes,
So it's
perfect.
nachesnow.com. And then if you just kind of want to see me talking about productivity and my favorite business tools, just head on over to Instagram at Nache Snow.
Perfect. Again, all the links are in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. So my final question for you today is this. And again, thanks again for sharing your brain and having this conversation today. Really, I think it's so good. And I already am sparking some ideas of how I'm going to change my day today as well. So someone somewhere is listening to this episode right now, and I'm imagining her, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and she is trying to get the tasks done. Maybe the baby has been asleep for a couple of hours, and she's like, this is the only time I have quiet. But she is burnt out, and she is burning the candle at both ends. What's one thing you could just whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would tell her it will get better because we've all been there when we're at the beginning of a business or middle, it doesn't matter. And we all have had to put in late nights and, sleepless nights and a lot of work. But eventually she will get to the place where she will have her team that will do all the things for her, that she will get those 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Like, it's coming, I would just tell her to just hold on a little bit longer and it'll all be worth it.
Yeah, maybe drink a glass of water as well.
Yeah.
Nache, thank you so much for your time.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on.